Good afternoon. So we will continue our discussion on the finite volume method. I hope you can see the screen. Can somebody confirm?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Okay. Internet connection seems to be poor still. So anyway, we had started discussing about the finite volume method in the previous class, and we noted that it is one method for discretization. The other method we have already seen, finite difference method. And we have gone through some of the points regarding the finite volume method. So basic idea was that we divide the domain into a finite number of subdomains, which are known as control volumes. Each subdomain is represented by a grid point at its centroid. Okay, it may not be at the centroid, but for general cases we can assume that it is at the centroid. And let me bring it closer. The mic is close to me. And each of these subdomain is of finite size. Okay. Now we have the governing equations over the entire domain, valid over the entire domain. So we simplify this governing equation for each subdomain. Okay, where we write the derivatives in terms of algebraic expressions in terms of the grid point values. So say grid point value, so value of temperature at P, then value of temperature at the neighboring grid points. So in terms of grid point and this neighboring grid point values. So like this we write. So that ultimately we have a set of algebraic equations corresponding to each set of equation is for one control volume. So we have for the entire domain large number of equations which can be solved simultaneously to obtain the variable values. Okay. So this solution of the discretized equation is done in the same way as we have studied in the previous case. So whatever methods we have discussed like TDMA or Jacobi method or Gauss-Seidel method, but how we arrive at those discretized equation is different for finite volume method. Okay. And we noted some of the features of this finite volume method. One important feature is that the equations are conserved over each subdomain. Okay, so all the variables like energy, momentum, these are conserved over each subdomain. Okay, and also over the entire domain. This is different from finite difference method, where we solve the equations in a differential form, which states that the which ensures the conservation of properties at infinitesimal points, but it does not ensure the conservation of properties at finite volumes. Okay, but because in this finite volume method we integrate the equation, the differential equation over the entire control volume. In this process we ensure that the conservation of properties are followed even at the level of the domain or subdomain. Okay, and we have seen how to proceed with that. I will just repeat this because we will continue this also today. So although we have discussed in the previous class, I will repeat this part so as to maintain continuity. So if there is a 1D diffusion with source term, okay, a general equation d dx of gamma d phi dx plus s. So where gamma is the diffusivity and phi is the variable which we are concerned with. So gamma can be conductivity, phi can be temperature, or it can be material diffusivity, phi can be concentration, or it can be mu, okay, viscosity, and phi can be velocity. So anyway, this is the form of the diffusion equation in 1D, and we have another term which is the source term. Okay. So in finite volume formulation, what do we do? Say we have a 1D domain. Okay, the 1D domain is typically denoted like this. So we have a domain which is divided into multiple control volumes. All these are 1D control volumes. Although I am showing as rectangles, these are actually segments of line. Okay. So one of the control volume which we are concerned with goes from small w to small e. So length of the control volume is say delta x going from small w to small e. Okay, and its grid point is capital P. Okay, it is at the center of this control volume. Imagine that these are lines, not rectangles. Okay, they don't have the height y. Okay, I am showing it just as a measure of means to show you how the control volumes look like, but actually these are 1D control volumes. So the neighboring control volume for P is, or neighboring grid point for P is the grid point E on the east side and capital W on the west side. Okay, and they have their own control volumes. So for this particular control volume P, we can integrate our governing equation, okay, for the entire control volume like this. So integral over the control volume delta V d dx of gamma d phi dx dv plus integral over delta V of s dv is equal to 0. Okay. So we are converting the differential equation into an integral form. Okay. And if you do this using divergence theorem, we can write this as gamma a d phi dx at the east interface minus gamma a d phi dx at the west interface plus averages over the control volume into delta V, where delta V is the size of the control volume. Okay. So this step means converting the volume integral to this flux form using the divergence theorem is nothing but, physically you can think of it as how much change of flux is occurring in the domain. This is given by what is the net flux coming into the domain. Okay, so the change in flux in the domain is based on the net flux coming into the domain. That is what we mean. So the net flux coming into the domain is whatever is the flux that is crossing the interfaces. There are two interfaces, the east and west interface. So the flux crossing the east interface is gamma into A into d phi dx E, where A is the area. Okay, we can remove the A also. Okay, in this equation there was no A. Actually, we can remove the A also, and A is the cross sectional area along this of this interface minus gamma A d phi dx west. And then we have discussed what are the main steps of finite volume discretization. Divide the entire domain into a number of finite size subdomains, which are known as control volumes. Each subdomain is represented by a grid point. Then integrate the governing differential equation as we have seen over each subdomain. We have seen for one subdomain. Okay. Up to this point we have derived. So from here we need to approximate this derivative in terms of grid point values. Okay. Because we stored the values only at grid points. We don't have values at the interfaces. So we have, for example, if phi is temperature, we have the temperature at point P. We have the temperature at point capital E and capital W. Okay. We don't have temperature at small e and small w, which are the interface values. So somehow we have to interpolate the values at small e and small w. Okay. To interpolate this value, we have to assume how the temperature or the variable phi is varying from P to E. Okay, whether it is linearly varying or quadratically varying, how it is varying from P to E. If it is linearly varying, we can just take linear average at point E. Okay, so we can take Tp plus Te by 2 to be the value at point E. Okay, but if it is not linearly varying, we cannot take that average. So accordingly, we have to calculate based on what is the assumption of variation. Okay, so that assumption of variation of phi is known as profile assumption. So we have to consider a profile assumption for the dependent variable for evaluating the integrals to express the results in terms of algebraic quantities at grid points. Okay. So what we will do is, once we assume that how the variable varies at E and W interfaces, we can replace this d phi dx in terms of the grid point values. For example, I can replace d phi dx E as Te minus Tp by the distance between E and P. Okay, T capital E minus T capital P by the distance between E and P. If I assume that this varies linearly, okay, if the temperature varies linearly. For example, for this expression phi, d phi dx at east is phi at east minus phi at P divided by the distance between east and the P grid point. Okay. So once we do this, all the derivatives will be gone and we will have only grid point values. Then we will have an equation in terms of grid point values. Similarly, we will have other equations in terms of grid point values, which we can solve together to find the grid point values. Okay. Our aim is to find the unknown grid point values. So this profile assumption means that we need a variation of the dependent variable as function of independent variable. So in our case, the independent variable here was x. So that's why we are finding the value of phi with x. If we have two independent variables, x and y, then we have to assume the variation of phi with both x and y. Okay, we have to find the variation of phi with both x and y. And some other features we had discussed in the previous class was that the subdomains can be of arbitrary shape Okay, need not be rectangular like finite difference method. It can have any shape. It can be triangular, quadrilateral, pentagonal, and need not be regular also. It can be irregular, quadrilateral. Okay, unlike square or rectangle. As a result, we can use or we can solve the CFD problem for any complex shape using finite difference method, finite volume method. Okay, unlike finite difference method, using finite volume method, any complex shape can be tackled because we can create arbitrary shapes within that complex shape to fit the shape of the actual domain. Okay, this is not so. For example, if you have a aerofoil shape, okay, so it is very easy to fit a set of irregular triangles within the aerofoil structure. If you use the finite difference method, you have to divide the aerofoil into rectangles. Okay, so you will have at the boundaries you will have a zigzag pattern which will create a problem. This will be clear towards the end of the course when we discuss about irregular structures, irregular geometries. Okay. Finite volume method for irregular geometries. Okay. For the most of the course, in fact, the entire syllabus of the course is for regular geometries. It is only out of curiosity that we study the irregular geometry part as an addition to the syllabus. So finite volume discretization also satisfies the principle of conservation. Why it is so? Because we are integrating the differential equation over the entire subdomain. As a result, the conservation is valid over the subdomain. Okay. This is different from differential form of the governing equation which satisfies the principle of conservation over single points. So then, so up to this point we had studied in the previous class. Okay. So what we are going to do is we are going to see for a general case how the finite volume method works, and then we will go into some typical examples. Okay, starting with 1D conduction problem, then 1D conduction with source term, transient 1D conduction, then conduction plus convection, and finally full convection problem. Over the entire course, over the rest of the course, we will go like this. Okay, each of the part will take many classes. So each of them is a separate chapter. So how to treat each of the individual terms actually involves a lot of in-depth study. So I will switch off my camera. So let us consider a general steady state convection diffusion equation without any source term. Okay, just to see how the finite volume method works. Okay, so the general convection diffusion equation with source and unsteady term could be written like this: del t of rho phi plus del dot rho u phi is equal to del dot gamma del phi plus s. This we have studied in the beginning. Okay, we have four terms: the transient term, the convective term, the diffusive term, and the source term. So because we are considering steady state convection diffusion without source, we can remove the source term and we can remove the unsteady term. Okay, so for steady state convection diffusion, we have only two terms left: del dot rho u phi equal to del dot gamma del phi. Okay. Now for a general control volume, we have to integrate this equation over the control volume. Okay, so integration over the control volume of del dot rho u phi minus gamma del phi. If I take this to the left hand side, del dot rho u phi minus gamma del phi dv equal to 0. Okay. If I read this term rho u phi minus gamma del phi, this is known as flux, overall flux. Okay, it is a summation of the convective and diffusive flux. Okay, and is denoted by J. J is rho u phi minus gamma gradient of phi. Okay. So del dot J into dv equal to 0 over the entire control volume. Okay. So integral of flux over the entire control volume is 0. This is equal to, by using the divergence theorem, J dot n ds. Okay, J dot n ds equal to 0. Okay, so this can be written as J dot n ds. So this is not equal to sign. This is just therefore sign. Therefore, J dot n ds equal to 0. What does it mean? It means that the flux over the entire surface, n is the normal vector. Okay, so the dot product of flux with the normal vector means that whatever is the flux in the perpendicular direction to the surface. So if we have an arbitrary surface, I don't have the whiteboard to draw. Okay. So we have to imagine. So if we have an arbitrary surface, okay, let me go back to some of this. If I have an arbitrary surface like this, okay, over the entire surface of the control volume, the flux that is entering, so that is perpendicular to the surface at each point. Okay, if we integrate that, that is equal to 0, because there is no such term, there is no generation or there is no going away of flux. So whatever is the flux coming in should be equal to the flux going out. So the net flux over the entire domain is equal to 0. Okay, that is the meaning of this expression, j dot n ds equal to 0. It may look complicated at this point to you, but for our simple examples of rectangles and cubes, this will be a simple expression. Okay. So in this integral over the control surface of j dot n ds equal to 0 using divergence theorem. So what are the steps then? So if the grid point is at the center of the CV, okay, after this point, we need to calculate the flux across the control surface. So we have to calculate j dot n, and it has to be represented in terms of the variable phi at the different grid points. Okay, each grid point is at the center of the CV. So this j dot n has to be calculated based on the grid point values of phi. Okay, and to do that, we have to assume how phi varies from one grid point to another grid point. Okay, for example, it can vary linearly, quadratically, or it can remain constant in one grid control volume, then suddenly jump to another value in another control volume, like a stepwise manner. Okay, so this process is known as profile assumption. So with suitable profile assumption, we can calculate the flux, this j dot n value, and integrate it over the entire control surface to get algebraic equations in terms of phi at discrete grid points. Okay, so again, this language may create confusion to you. Language may create confusion to you, but if you revisit this part after going through a few classes on finite volume method, you will see what are the meanings of these points. Okay, after the first example, if we revisit this part, we will understand what is the meaning of this thing. Okay, how to actually calculate j dot n, and what it means for taking a profile assumption, and how to calculate the equation in terms of discrete grid point values. Any questions up to this point? This may be slightly confusing. Okay, the way I am teaching here also is slightly confusing, but this will become more clear with an example that we are going to do now. Okay. Any questions? Let us take a look at a 1D example. Okay, so as to actually understand what is happening, instead of just going through mathematical notation, which is somewhat confusing to us. So for this example, we will take a very simple problem. Okay, we will start with the basic problem, 1D steady state heat conduction with source term. Okay, 1D steady state heat conduction with source term. Although we are studying conduction problem, it does not mean that this is only valid for thermal problems. Okay, instead of T, we can have other variables like concentration or velocity also, and the same discussion will be valid for that also. It is just that all the books and even in our course also, we give this in terms of temperature, because understanding in terms of temperature is easier. Okay, instead of writing a general variable phi, we write in terms of temperature, because understanding that is simpler. But this T is just a representative of the general variable phi. Okay, so whatever we discuss for temperature is also valid for concentration, velocity, any similar equation. Okay, all the equations will have a viscous term or diffusive term like this, ddx of mu del u del x, or ddx of gamma del c del x, or ddx of k del t del x. Okay, so 1D steady state, so there is no transient term. Conduction, so there is no convective term, but there is a source term, so plus S equal to 0. Okay, like just what we have seen in previous class. Okay. So now let us assume that we want to solve this equation for a CFD problem. Okay, and we have a 1D domain like a say plate or bar. Okay, 1D bar, long metallic bar or rod is there, and the boundary conditions are given that temperature at the two end of the bar is given, and we want to find the temperature variation over the entire bar. Okay, along the length of the bar, not across the cross section, because it's a 1D problem. We can only find the temperature along the length. So what are the steps? You already know. We will divide it into a finite set of control volumes. Okay. So in this case, I am showing that we have divided into 6 control volumes. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So there are 6 control volumes shown by each of the control volumes shown by the red lines. Okay. And each of them is represented by a grid point at its center. So 2 is a grid point at the center of control volume 2, 3 is a grid point at the center of control volume 3. Similarly 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. 1 and 8 are grid points at the boundaries to take into account the boundary conditions. Okay. So now we will consider any one of the grid points. Okay, it does not matter whether we consider 3, 4, 5, any one of the grid points we will consider. Okay, and we will use general notation, which are used for for this purpose in the books. So in general notation, any representative grid point is denoted by the variable P, capital P. Okay. So say we are considering the grid point 4 and the control volume of corresponding to grid point 4. Okay. So the control volume goes from small w, which is the west face of the control volume, to small e, which is the east face of the control volume. Okay, and has a length of delta x. So remember, the control volume is from w to e, small w to small e, and has a length of delta x, and P is at the center of this control volume and is the grid point. Okay. The neighboring control volume goes from small e to the next dash that I am showing, the next red dash. Okay, and its center, at its center we have another grid point which represents the control volume, and let us call this as E for east. Okay. Similarly, on the west side we have capital W, which is the west grid point corresponding to the west control volume. Okay. So main control volume P with the main grid point P, then east neighbor E and west neighbor W. Okay, and east interface is small e and west interface is small w. This is the standard notation for a control volume. The distance between the grid points is given by delta x E from P to E and delta x W from W to P. Okay, so with this in mind, let us try to discretize this equation using finite volume method. Okay. I will also keep the picture open here. It will look very small, but this is just for reference. We will keep the picture open here. Okay. So integrate. So what is our step? Integrating the governing equation over the control volume. Okay. So what is the control volume now? Because it's a 1D problem, the control volume is just from small w to small e. Okay. So we have to just integrate from small w to small e. Okay. What do we need to integrate? The governing equation, d dx of k dt dx plus s. Okay. So we need to integrate this equation from small w to small e. So small w to small e, d dx of k dt dx dx, okay, along the length x, plus small w to small e s dx equal to 0. Okay. Integrating this equation from west to east, okay, which is the extent of the control volume. Now this can be written as k dt dx at east at this point minus k dt dx at west at this interface plus s into, so what is the integral of dx from west to east? It is equal to xe minus xw. Okay, so length distance between e and w, which is delta x. So s into delta x, we can write s into delta x. Okay, so k dt dx at east minus k dt dx at west plus s into delta x, assuming that s does not vary with x. So up to this point it is clear, or is there any question? Because this part is slightly tricky. This up to this point we have studied in the previous class also. Is it clear? Just give me a 1 minute break. Okay, I will just come from the water. All right. So can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions up to this point, or is it clear how the equation has been derived up to this point? Okay. K dt dx at the east flux. So you can understand physically also, instead of going through the maths, you can understand that the change that occurs due to source term within the control volume is equal to the net flux that is coming inside into the control volume. Okay, net flux inside the control volume. So from this point onward, now we need to take the profile assumption. That is, we need to assume how t varies with x. Okay, how is the variation of t from point P to capital E, or how is the variation of t from small capital W to P. Without this, we cannot calculate dt dx east and dt dx west. Okay, so we cannot just assume that it is linearly varying. Okay, we have to see that whether other profile variations also are useful or not, or other profile variations also can be used or not. Okay, so we will take a look at different variations of t. So why we need to do this? Because we want to replace this in terms of algebraic expression of t in terms of their grid point value, like Tp, Te and Tw. So I want to write this equation in terms of Tp, Tw and Te and remove these derivatives. Okay. Why do we need to write it in terms of Tw, Tp and Te? Because once we write this, we have the unknown variables, equation for unknown variables. Similarly, we will have equation for unknown variable for each grid point. And we will have n equations for n unknowns. We can solve the n equations for n unknowns to get the unknown variables, which are the temperature values at the grid points. So we will start with the first profile assumption, that in each control volume, the temperature is constant. Okay, this is the easiest assumption, simplest assumption, that for any control volume, the temperature is constant. Okay, and it is equal to the temperature of the grid point. So for example, if the temperature at point P is 300 Kelvin, I will assume that the entire control volume is at 300 Kelvin, because we cannot resolve inside a control volume, right? Because it is like the minimum pixel size. We cannot resolve inside the control volume. So we cannot say that here at the center the temperature is 300, at another point it is 250. Okay, so we are assuming that the entire control volume is at the same temperature. Similarly, if the grid point E is at 280 Kelvin, we will assume that the entire control volume is at 280 Kelvin. Similarly, if W is at 250 Kelvin, we will assume that the entire control volume is at 250 Kelvin. Okay, so this assumption is known as piecewise constant temperature variation, or piecewise constant assumption. Meaning in each control volume we have constant value, but each of them is different for different control volumes. Okay. Can we calculate? So let me keep this open in this side. Okay. Can we calculate the flux k dt dx at east based on this profile assumption? So what will be the value of k dt dx at the east interface based on this assumption? Can anyone answer? What will be the value of k dt dx at east if the temperature varies like this? What will be the value of? So k, let k be known. K is known. K at the east interface is known by interpolation. Okay, the value of k is also stored at the grid points, but we can assume that k at east is equal to k capital E plus k capital P by 2, means the average of E and P. Okay, so k is known. So how will we find dt dx at east? What will be the value of dt dx at east in terms of the grid point value? If this is the variation, can we find? Is the derivative dt dx defined at this point E?
No.
It is not defined, right? So it is undefined. So we cannot, because of step jump, we cannot actually calculate this value dt dx at the interface. Okay, cannot calculate dt dx at the interface of the control volume. That is, we cannot calculate at the east or west phase based on this profile assumption. So this profile assumption is not suitable. Then we will go to the next profile assumption. Okay, next profile assumption is that the temperature is linearly varying in each control volume. Okay, such that at this grid point the temperature is equal to the grid point value. Okay, so for example, this is at this grid point, this is the value at this grid point, and this is the value at this grid point. So we join them together so that in each control volume, say small w to small e, the temperature is linearly varying. In the next control volume, again it is linearly varying. In the previous control volume, it is linearly varying. Okay, so like this. So now there is no discontinuity in the temperature at the interfaces. Okay, temperature. So previous case, what was the problem? Temperature itself was discontinuous. At the interface, we had two temperature. So one point cannot have two temperature, right? So if small e point cannot have two different temperatures. So it was not suitable. But now the small e point has a single temperature. Similarly, small w point has a single temperature. So can we now define dt dx at small e and small w? What will be the value of dt dx at small e? So if we calculate dt dx from the side of P, okay, from this side, the slope is different, dt dx is different. If we calculate dt dx from the other side, the slope is different, right? So at the same point E, we have two values of dt dx, which cannot be true, right? I cannot have two different flux at the same point. If k is constant, so I should have a single flux, whether it is from, I calculate from this side or this side, whatever is the flux going from one side, it will be equal to the flux that is coming out onto the other side. Okay, I cannot have different flux at the same point. So whatever is the flux crossing from the left side should go into the right side. So this profile assumption is not also suitable, okay, because we are getting two different values of flux on for the two control volumes. But at the interface, the flux should be same, because whatever flux goes from one should come to the other. Okay, similar to flow, whatever flow comes from one control volume should come to the other control volume. Okay, but we are seeing that it is not equal. So this assumption is also not correct. So we will go into the third type of assumption. Okay, now we will assume that it is piecewise linear between each set of grid points, not in the control volume. Okay, in the control volume it can be discontinuous, but in the between the grid points it is linear. For example, from P to E, okay, we will go to the next. From P to E, it is a single line. Okay, similarly from W to P, it is a single line. So for the grid, actually it looks like this. Like this. Okay, for the grid it goes like this. So there is a sharp jump or sharp corner. Okay, although it is continuous, there is a change in the slope at this point, but across the interface the slope remains constant. Similarly, across this interface the slope remains constant. Okay. So this is known as piecewise linear profile assumption between each set of grid points. Okay, from P to E we have one linear variation, from W to P we have another linear variation. Okay, so can we now calculate dt dx at small e and small w?
Yes.
We can calculate, because and it will be consistent. Whether we calculate for this control volume P or whether we calculate for the control volume E, it will remain same. What will be the value? So dt dx at east at this small e point is equal to t e minus tp by this distance. Okay, if you remember the distance, if I go back to the geometry, this distance is delta xc. Okay, from P to E. So te minus tp by delta xc. Okay, ke into te minus tp by delta xc. Okay. So we can calculate dt dx at each control volume phase, and heat flux is continuous. Okay, so this profile assumption is valid, and based on the profile assumption, we have written this derivative k dt dx at east as ke into te minus tp by delta xc. Similarly, on the west face, we can write this k dt dx at west as k at west, k at this small point, into Tp minus Tw by this distance between P and W, which is delta XW. Okay, plus S into Xc minus SW is delta X. So this distance. So this is delta X, S delta X. Okay. See, now we have removed these derivatives and we have removed it with grid point values. Okay, this was our target. If you remember, this was our target, to remove the derivatives and write in terms of grid point values. It is important to note here that this is not the only profile variation which is acceptable. We can have even more complicated, like quadratic or cubic profile variation, assuming that the heat flux remains constant and we can calculate dt dx at these interfaces. Other profile assumptions are also valid and will give the same solution. Only the rate of convergence will be different. Okay. But because this is working, let us assume this as the simplest assumption. So now, any questions up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir, like maybe on interface we got the T values and we converted them, but then still, sir, that anomaly of two fluxes at a point is still there, no? Like at the P point we have two fluxes. How is the solution?
It does not bother us because we only need to calculate the flux at the interfaces. Okay. So what happens within the grid point, within the control volume, is of no consequence to us. Okay. This is so one important thing to note here is that we are defining this temperature variation as linear variation. In the actual problem, this need not be linear variation. Okay, the actual problem may have any other variation. For example, the actual variation may be like this. Okay, we do not know what is the actual variation. For solving our problem, we are denoting that the variation is like this. Now, this helps us in, I will come back to your question, this helps us in calculating the heat flux at the interfaces, because we need to calculate the heat flux at the interface. At any other point, we don't need to calculate the heat flux, so it does not cause any problem. Now, after solving this, what will we obtain? We will obtain only the values of temperature at the grid point. So at P, at W, and at E. Okay. In between, we do not know what is the variation. Initially, while solving, we had assumed that it is linear, but in real life, we do not know the variation, and you cannot tell also. Okay. So ultimately, in a numerical problem, what you get is the values at only discrete points. So at point W, you will know the correct value. At point P, you will know the correct value, and at point E, you will know the correct value. Now, when we are plotting, you will do some interpolation to actually plot based on this. So you may plot it like this, say going like this, depending on other values, or you can plot it like this. It depends on you. Okay, how you are plotting this, how you are connecting this, because we don't have this information. The only information after solving a CFD problem, so if you use ANSYS or any CFD solver or a code, is that you get the variable values only at the grid points. Okay, no variation within the grid points. I had shown, I think, in the previous class also, if you remember, we had discussed this. I will open the lecture because opening the file will take too much time. Oh, but you will not be able to see the lecture. Okay, I don't have the file here. If I play the lecture here, can you see that lecture? I want to actually show what I mean. Can you see what I am showing on the screen, or is it not visible to you? The plot, is it visible to you?
Yes, sir.
So see, ultimately what we obtain in a CFD problem, we had discussed in the previous class, is this discrete value. So each control value has a single value, which is the grid point value at the center. Okay. For example, this green color shows one value, the yellow color shows one value, orange color shows one value. Okay. These are we are plotting it like this, but actually these are only at the center. We don't know the variation. Now when you are plotting, you can plot it in a nice manner. Like I can plot it like this. Say instead of this discrete value, easy. See, I can join these lines to get a nice looking profile. But this is what we are doing, what is known as post processing. This is not a value that we are obtaining. Okay, this is just by joining the values based on our, like, it is not given by the solver how these values are connected. We are joining it linearly or in any way which is suitable. We are getting this curved lines. Okay. So it does not matter to us how the variation occurs from one grid point to the other. What is known to us is only the grid point values. Okay, so it is we do not bother whether there is a jump in the interface or not, because we are not assuming this profile ultimately in the final solution. I hope I am tangentially at least able to answer your question. If there is still confusion, you let me know. Okay, what I am trying to say is that we only have discrete values. If you divide the domain into 100 pixels, like 100 control values, like 100 pixels, okay, in your screen, you have the values at only at those 100 pixels or 100 control volumes. You do not know what is the variation from one control volume to the next control volume, and you will never know also. Okay, it's just for plotting purpose. You show them in a nice way. Okay, but in actual cases, the solution only consists of these 100 values. Okay, so it does not matter to us that whether there is a jump in between the values, because there will be, these are just discrete values, these are not continuous values. So anyway, you are not going to calculate derivative. So if you want to calculate the derivative at point P, what will you do? How will you find the derivative at point P? Say if you want to calculate the heat flux at the control for the control volume P, what will be your option in a numerical problem? It will not be accurate, but what will be the option? What values do we have? At what locations do we have the temperature values? P, capital W and capital E, right? So in that case, how will we find, what can be one method of finding the value at midpoint P? I can write TE minus TW by the distance between E and W. So TE minus TW by 2 delta X. Although it will not be accurate, it will not capture the actual variation, but that is what is only available to us, right? That is the best approximation that we have. Is it clear now what I am trying to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if there is still confusion, please let me know. These are very important part of CFD. Okay, without understanding this, yes, you are saying something?
No, sir. I just thought I got it.
Okay, fine. So now we can write this as KTE minus TP by delta XE minus KW TP minus TW by delta XW plus S into delta X. Okay, S is given, S is known to us, and KE and KW are the interface conductivity values. We will see later in the next class how, or even today itself, I don't know, we have to see up to how much we can cover, how to find this interface conductivity value. One approximation can be that this is just a linear average. So K at the interface may be K at capital E plus K at capital P divided by 2. Okay, that can be done. Okay, but let us, for this moment, let us assume that K east and K west is known. Okay, and delta XC and delta XW are also known values based on the grid generation. Okay, this is just geometrical parameters. So now I can take all the TP terms together and put it like this: KE by delta XC plus KW by delta XW TP. By taking all the TP terms on one side and all the other terms to the other side, we can write as KE by delta XC TE plus KW by delta XW TW plus S into delta X. Okay, this can be written as AP into TP, where AP is the coefficient, this term, coefficient of TP, A is the coefficient of T, AW is the coefficient of TW, and B is additional term, source term. Okay. What is the advantage of writing it in this form? We now have a linear algebraic equation, right, for the grid point P in terms of its neighboring points. If we derive similar equation for n number of grid points, we will have n equations and n unknowns, and we can solve the n equations to obtain the n unknown values. What are the n unknowns? The temperature value at the n unknown, means the unknown temperature at each of the grid point. Okay, so these coefficients AP, AE and AW and this B are known. Okay, so what is AE? AE is KE by delta XC, AW is KW by delta XW, AP is this term which is equal to AE plus AW, you can see, and B is S into delta X. Okay, so ultimately you will see that for any CFD problem using finite volume method, any CFD problem, whether it is a 2D problem, 3D problem, we will write the grid point value, variable value, as AP into TP if it is temperature, or phi p if it is any other variable, is equal to summation of over all the neighboring points of coefficient A into T. Okay, here the neighboring points are E and W, east and west. So here the summation is AE plus AW. If I had north and south points, I would have two more terms, A north T north plus A south T south. Okay, plus another term which accounts for the source term. This is the general form of the equation. Any discretized equation in finite volume will ultimately lead to this form. Okay, and we know how to solve these equations. We will have n equations and n unknowns, and we can use any of the methods that we have learned previously in the last few classes to solve that set of linear algebraic equations. Okay. To summarize, the grid point variable value Tp is expressed in terms of neighboring values of Te and Tw in general. Okay, for a general problem which is not a 1D problem, can be 2D, 3D, or it can have non-uniform grid structure like a pentagon, hexagon, okay, heptagon. We will have APTP is equal to summation of over all the neighboring points A and B, T and B, where A and B is the coefficient of that neighboring grid point. Okay, so A1 T1 plus A2 T2 plus A3 T3 like this, plus B, where B accounts for the source term. Okay. If I come back to the original diagram, say this grid control volume P, how many faces does it have? How many neighboring grid points does it have? Each face will correspond to one neighbor. Okay, so this is one neighbor, this is one neighbor, this is one neighbor, this is one neighbor, and this is one neighbor. Common faces. Neighbors are defined by common faces. So we have 5 neighbors, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so I can write APTP is equal to A1 T1. Let me just open this. So I can write APTP is equal to A1 T1 for this point plus A2 T2 for this point, common faces only. Okay, plus A3 T3 for this point plus A4 T4 plus A5 T5. Okay, 5 neighboring points. So A1 T1 plus A2 T2 plus A3 T3, A4 T4 plus A5 T5 plus B. Okay, so that will be the general equation for us. So for this 1D problem, we have only 2 neighbors, so 2 terms are there. Okay. In general, it will be APTP is equal to summation over all the neighbors A and B, T and B plus B. Then another important point is that different profile assumptions can be taken for different parameters. Okay. For example, we have already taken linear assumption for T between the grid points. However, for S, source term, I did not discuss, but we have taken, assume that source is constant within a control volume. Okay. It means that we have taken constant profile assumption for source. So for each variable, we can take different profile assumption because this is only required for solving. Ultimately, the converse solution will be the correct solution, whatever is the profile assumption. Okay, it does not matter on the profile assumption. The converse solution will be the same solution, whatever is the profile assumption. And it is the converse solution is only the solution at the discrete points. It does not give us any variation within the from one point to another point. It just gives us the correct value at the points itself. Okay. Then interface values of conductivity such as Ke and Kw are obtained from grid point values using interpolation, as I have discussed. Another point to note is that if K is a function of t, or if S is a nonlinear function of t, okay, in those cases, this discretized equation becomes a nonlinear equation. Okay, and then we need to solve it iteratively. Okay, we will discuss this later. But if K is say function of t, K is equal to t square, a into t square, okay, or a into t, or S is a nonlinear function of t. So S is equal to b into t square or c into t square. Okay, so then this equation will become non-linear. If the equation becomes non-linear, you cannot use the solution techniques for solving linear set of algebraic equations because the equation itself is non-linear. So then we have to solve it in using iterative method. Okay, how we will do it, we will discuss later. Is this clear? So the aim of this part was to show you how to use the finite volume method. So first time we are seeing how to use the finite volume method for an actual problem. That's why we have taken a very simple problem with a very simple 1D geometry, and we have seen how to discretize over a single control volume using the finite volume method. Okay, so after this, now we can revisit this part what we have discussed today in the beginning, that integral over the entire control volume. So in our case, the entire control volume, so we will keep this open. In our case, the entire control volume was from small w to small e. Okay, so integral over the entire control volume for the equation. Our equation was del dot gamma del phi plus s. So we had only those two terms. We did not have the convective term, and we converted it to integral over this surface. So our integral over the entire control surface, our surfaces are of single points. There is actually no area for the surface. So as a result, the flux over the surfaces are k dt dx at this point and k dt dx at this point. Okay, there is no area because these are single points. So ultimately, this j dot n for our case over the entire surface is k dt dx at east and k dt dx at west. For a 1D domain, the only surface are 2 points. Okay, one point on the one side and one point on the other side. So this is the j dot n value. The integral of j dot n over the entire control volume is equal to only this k dt dx at east minus k dt dx at west, which after profile assumption we have obtained to be k e t minus tp by delta xc minus kw tp by minus tw by delta xw, and ultimately based on this we obtained the algebraic equation. Okay, algebraic equation of the TP value in terms of its neighboring grid point values. And we know that if we have n, say 100 equations and 100 unknowns, we can solve these 100 equations to find the value of the 100 unknowns using TDMA or any other method like Gauss-Seidel method or Jacobi method or directly matrix inversion, okay, Gaussian method, Gaussian elimination. So up to this point, is it clear? So the role of the finite volume method is to find this discretized equation. Okay, solution is not the role of the finite volume method. Once you find the discretized equation, you can use the same solution method for finite difference or finite volume. How to obtain this value of AP, AE, and AW and B? This is the role of the finite volume method. So how to find it? Basically, what is the value of AP? What is the value of AE, AW, and B? That is what we have found ultimately. If we find what is AP, AE, AW, and B, we can supply this to the solver to solve for the temperature values. Okay, I will take a break here and we will continue this discussion after the break. Think about if you have any questions meanwhile. So we'll continue. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Let us continue. So before going into more terms like transient terms and other things, we will have to understand a few things regarding finite volume method or in general regarding discretization. Okay. So first of this is what are the requirements of discretization? Means if we discretize equation to obtain the discretized equation, what is discretization? Do you remember discretization? So basically you are converting a partial differential equation into a system of algebraic equations. So you have a single partial differential equation valid over the entire domain, but now you are converting into a large number of equations, each of them valid over small domains like subdomains, but the equations are much simpler. These are algebraic equations, not partial differential equations, although the number of equations is large depending on what is the number of domains, subdomains. Okay. So any method of discretization should follow two main criteria. One is that it should be physically consistent. Okay, it should be physically consistent, and second is that it should give or maintain overall balance. Okay, physical consistency and overall balance. So let us try to understand these two. What do we mean by physical consistency, and then later we will try to understand what do we mean by overall balance. Okay. So physical consistency means that if we do a discretization and then obtain a solution using the discretized method, our solution should be realistic, okay, and physically realistic. It can be approximate or inaccurate, but it should be within the bounds of physics, means what is told to us. So this will be more clear with the help of some examples. So let me show you a couple of examples. One example is that let us consider 1D conduction problem without any source term. Okay, so there is a plate, metallic plate or bar or rod, which is held at one end at 0 degree centigrade, and at the other end it is kept at 100 degree centigrade, and there is no source term. Okay, so at the steady state, what will be the temperature distribution here? What is the expected temperature distribution in what is the means exact solution, correct temperature distribution at steady state without source term? You guys are not responding. You have to answer questions.
Linear.
Linear, right? Simple thing. So actual solution will be something like what is given by the pink line here. Okay, going from 0 to 100. So if my solution from the numerical problem follows this blue line, okay, this is acceptable, means this is at least physically consistent. It may not be very accurate, it is approximate, but it is physically consistent. It follows the same pattern as that of the actual solution. However, if your numerical algorithm after discretization gives this black line, top black line, okay, what is the problem here? Some of the points within this region has temperature values which is more than 100 degrees centigrade, but because there is no source term and one end is at 0 degree and another end is at 100 degree, physics tells us that no point in between can have a temperature below 0 degree or more than 100 degree, as there is no source term. So ultimately it has to be the temperature of the entire bar or plate has to be within the boundary temperatures. Okay, so we don't know whether, in this case we know obviously that it's linear variation, but even if it was not linear, okay, it would have to be between these two bounds without any source terms. But in our this black line is showing that it is going below beyond 100 degrees centigrade. Similarly, the bottom black line is showing that it is going below 0 degrees centigrade. So these are physically inconsistent, unrealistic. Okay, so if we get this type of solution, or if our discretization method gives this type of solution, it does not follow the requirement of physical consistency. Is this clear? Means, is it clear to all of you what is the difference between inaccuracy and inconsistency. Means what is the difference between accurate solution and consistent solution? Is the distinction clear? What is an accurate solution and what is a
Yes, sir.
consistent solution? Consistent solution need not be accurate. Accurate means that it is as near to the real value as possible. Consistent means that it is within the laws of physics. Okay. For example, say in thermodynamics also, if you solve a problem, you are getting that work output is more than the heat input. It means that it is violating the first law of thermodynamics. So that cannot be true. Okay. So that is physically inconsistent. But if you are solving the problem and getting some work output which is reasonable but not equal to the exact work output, so that is an approximate solution. It is inaccurate, but it is physically consistent. Okay. Same thing happens here also. Another example is of adiabatic boundary condition or insulated. Okay. Typically, which we call as adiabatic boundary condition. So if the wall is adiabatic, if there is no heat flux across the wall, what is the value of what will be the isotherms? What will be the orientation of the isotherms? Isotherms, you know, right? Constant temperature lines. Okay. So the isotherms has to be perpendicular to this wall. Why? Why are the isotherms perpendicular to the wall? If the wall is adiabatic. Answers. I need answers. You have to be more proactive, all of you. Otherwise, I will pick up people and ask.
Sir, there is no heat flux transferred at the boundary, so gradient should be 0 there.
Correct. So no heat flux. K dt dx is 0. So dt dx is 0. Gradient is 0. So it means that there is no variation of t with respect to x because dt dx is 0. Okay. So as a result, t remains constant with x just adjacent to the boundary. So the blue lines are the correct isotherms. But for some reason, if we get this type of lines which are shown by the pink lines, okay, that there is a gradient at the interface at the wall, it means that our results are inconsistent. Okay, it cannot be true. For adiabatic boundary condition, if we, and this is the common problem I see in many CFD solution, students sometimes run solution and show me the results, and I see that temperature at the boundary is following this type of pattern. Isotherms are bending like this. So it means that something has gone wrong. Okay. It is physically inconsistent because GTDX is not 0 in this case in the solution. So I have written this also as GTDX equal to 0 for adiabatic condition, isotherm should be perpendicular to the wall adjacent to the boundary. Okay. So this is, there can be other examples also of physically inconsistent problems. Okay. So any physical inconsistency should you can think of should be avoided. Okay. So if you are giving a positive heat source term, temperature is decreasing. It means that it is physically inconsistent. If I have initially a constant temperature, say sphere, and I give a positive heat source, or if I am heating it, temperature should increase. If I find the temperature is decreasing, it means that solution is inconsistent, unrealistic. Okay, and it's a big problem. This is one requirement. Second is that overall balance should be maintained. Overall balance means what? Total energy in the domain should be conserved. Means you have a certain, say you have a sphere or this rod that we are seeing. So the total energy of this, total sensible heat that is stored in this sphere or rod, plus the energy that comes into the rod. Okay. So everything, so if I add up all together, it should be conserved. Okay. So conservation should be valid over the entire domain. Conservation of what? Conservation of heat, mass, momentum, etc. Everything should be conserved. Okay. And it should also be valid for any number of grid points, which is very important. So if I divide the domain into say 100 grid points, I am finding that conservation is correct. But if I divide the domain into 3 grid points, I am finding that there is lot of inaccuracy. Then there is a problem. Even if I have a very coarse grid structure, coarse means less number of grid points. So even if I divide the domain into say, if I have a long metallic, say this bar, this problem. Okay, I divide it into only 3 control volumes. Then also the total energy given by the predicted by our model should be conserved. If it is not conserved, then the discretization is an issue. But luckily for us, the finite volume method conservation is always valid because of the way we derive the discretized equation by integrating the Gavarni equation. We derive the discretized equation. So finite volume formulation inherently makes the conservation possible. Okay, why? Because the differential equation is integrated over the entire subdomain control volume. So over the entire subdomain, the conservation of properties are valid. Okay. And we have already discussed that care is needed while calculating the flux at the control volume interfaces. So the flux that leaves from one control volume should be equal to the flux that is entering the other control volume. Okay, that also we need to take care of. Okay. So this is these are the requirements of discretization: physical consistency, overall balance. Any questions on this? Otherwise, we will move on to the next small topic. So there are small topics like this. Okay, before going into the next chapter. So if there is no question, next topic actually also is a very important topic, although it's a small topic. It is how to actually calculate the value of K at the interface. If you remember, just today we were discussing few minutes back, right? That we know what is the value of K at the east interface and at the west interface, Ke and Kw. Okay, but how exactly this Ke and Kw is known? Because we are not storing the value at the east interface and west interface. We only store the value at the grid point. So because we store only the value at the grid point, somehow the east interface value has to be represented by the grid point value. So you can say that I will just take an average, K at E plus K at P divided by 2. Similarly, here I will take K at P plus K at W divided by 2. Okay. So whether that is sufficient or do we need to take something else, that is the question. Okay, question in front of us. Okay. So that is what I have written here. So say the value of K varies over the domain. Okay, I have again drawn the domain here. I have just drawn 2 control volumes, the pth control volume and the east control volume. Okay, because discussing about one of the interface is fine. You can just use the same method for other interface. So we have the control volume that we are concerned with, which is the pth control volume on the left side, going from this line, vertical line, to this vertical line, and then we have the east control volume going from this vertical line to this line. Okay, each of them has the grid point at its center, so P at the center and capital E at the center, and the interface is given by small e, blue dotted line here. Okay, the distance between these 2 grid points is delta xe, and the distance from P grid point to the interface, let us call this as delta xe minus, and the distance from the interface to the E grid point, let us call this as delta xe plus. Okay, so delta xe minus and delta xe plus together is equal to delta xe. Okay, and say the conductivity is defined. So conductivity for the pth control volume is Kp, which is defined at point P, and for the eth control volume is Ke, which is defined at point E. Okay, Kp at point P and Ke at point E. So we need to find the value of Ke at the interface E in terms of K capital P and K capital E, Kp and Ke. So we need to find the value at E in terms of Kp and Ke. Okay, why? Because K is defined at each grid point corresponding to each CV. Then what should be the value of K at the interface between the 2 CVs? Okay, so let us consider that this is just linearly averaged. Okay, if we assume that delta xe plus is equal to delta xe minus, our intuition says that K is equal to Kp plus Ke by 2. Okay, in general we can assume that if we consider this block going from capital P to capital E, if more material P is there, so delta xe minus into Kp then the material E delta Xc plus into K divided by the entire material delta Xc minus plus delta Xc plus. Okay. This is the average value K. If delta Xc minus and delta Xc plus are equal, this will become equal to Kp plus Ke by 2. Okay. This is what we think of when we think what should be the average value at the interface. Okay. And this is known as linear average. Is it clear to everyone? Can you find a problem with this approach? Can you think of some problem with this approach? Okay, let us continue and we will see what is the problem. Although it looks like this should be the correct approach, actually this is not the correct approach. Okay, we will see what is the correct approach. Okay, to do this, let us try to understand the physical situation. Let us consider a composite material. Okay, so this composite material consists of two materials, one material going from capital P to E. So I will keep this diagram open on the other side. Okay. This on the other side I will keep open. One material goes from P to E with a conductivity of Kp, and the second material goes from small e to capital E with a conductivity of Ke. Okay, so it's a composite material, and we want to find out the average conductivity between capital P and E. So how will we find the average conductivity? Based on the heat flux we are going to find. Okay, let us assume that there is a heat flux that is applied from P to E, and this is equal to Q double dash. Okay. So at steady state, we can write that Q double dash is equal to Tp minus T. So basically it is equal to minus K dt dx. Okay, which is Tp minus T for this material from P to small e. This is Tp minus T divided by delta Xc minus by Kp. Okay, where delta Xc minus by Kp is the thermal resistance. Similarly, for this second part, heat flux is equal to T small e minus T capital E divided by delta Xc plus divided by Ke. Okay, K capital E. So both the heat flux has to be same because it's the same heat which is flowing from P to small e and from small e to E. So both should be equal. So Tp minus T small e divided by delta Xc minus by Kp should be equal to T small e minus T capital E by delta Xc plus by Ke. Okay. And if we add these two together, we get also this is equal to Tp minus T divided by delta Xc minus by Kp plus delta Xc plus by Ke. Okay, this is the heat flux. Now, if we consider this composite material as a single material with a single conductivity equal to K small e, okay, equivalent conductivity, I can also write the heat flux as T at this point Tp minus Te by the entire distance delta Xc divided by equivalent conductivity Ke. Okay, where Ke is the equivalent conductivity from P to E, as if this is a single material with a single conductivity. Okay, so these two values should be equal because it is the same heat flux. So Tp minus Te by this term delta Xc minus by Kp plus delta Xc plus by Ke should be equal to Tp minus T by delta Xc by Ke. Okay, or delta Xc minus by Kp plus delta Xc plus by Ke is equal to delta X small e by Ke, K small e. Okay, if delta Xc minus and delta Xc plus are equal, means if the interface is halfway in between these 2 points, which is generally the case we take. If you replace them, we will get 1 by Kp plus 1 by K is equal to 2 by K small e, or Ke is equal to 2 by 1 by Kp plus 1 by Ke. What is this? 1 by Kp plus 1 by Ke is equal to 2 by K small e. K small e is the harmonic mean of Kp and Ke. Okay, K small e is the harmonic mean, not the linear mean, arithmetic mean, but the harmonic mean of Kp and Ke. So we see that in real life, in actual case, if there is a composite material, the equivalent conductivity should be used as a harmonic mean of Kp and Ke. So this should be a better approximation for our interface conductivity. Instead of writing K is equal to Kp plus Ke by 2, we should write it as K is equal to 2 by 1 plus Kp plus 1 by Ke. Is this clear to everyone? Or is there any doubt or question here? Yes. So harmonic mean is a better approximation of Ke. Okay. However, linear mean also can give correct results in many cases. Okay, if you use linear mean also it will give correct results. But what happens is that if there is a sudden jump in conductivity, in most cases there is no sudden jump in conductivity, but there may be some material like there you are solving for a material where on one side there is metal and on the other side there is the insulating material. Okay, so there is suddenly a jump in conductivity from the insulating material to the metal. Okay, in those cases this linear mean will cause a problem. Okay, you need a very extreme grid spacing, means very small grids to resolve the conductivity accurately, otherwise it will give a problem. But if you take harmonic mean, even if you have less number of grid points, still you will get accurate solution, physically consistent solution. Okay, this we will make clear. I will make clear by showing you an example. With this we will stop today with this example. Let us consider a limiting case. Let us consider this material, okay, steel, okay, or this composite material. One of the materials has a very high conductivity. Say this material Kp conductivity is very high, it is metal. On the other side it has a very low conductivity like wood or some other material with a very low conductivity like an insulator. Okay. In this case, what will be the arithmetic mean? If K is very small, like K is almost equal to 0. Okay. So arithmetic mean is equal to Kp plus Ke by 2, because K is almost equal to 0. It is almost equal to Kp by 2 as Kp is very large. Okay. So the average conductivity using arithmetic mean is Kp by 2. However, what will be the heat flow from one side of this material to the other side? If you apply a temperature difference, say 100 degrees centigrade temperature difference, what will be the heat flux from one side to the other? If I have a composite of metal and insulator, like say the handle of a cooking pan or something like that, or some other insulating material, what is the heat flux? Even if we give a large temperature difference. Very simple question. Even if lot of amount of metal is present, if some layer of insulating material is present, will there be significant heat flux across this? Say I have a metallic plate and then I put a layer of some layer of plastic over it, okay, or polymer or wood. Then I apply a temperature difference. Will there be significant heat flux, heat transfer?
No, sir.
It cannot, because the insulating material is the dominant factor, right? It does not matter what metal. So if I have aluminum or copper or whatever, silver, it does not matter to us, because whatever is the metal conductivity is of no use, because ultimately the governing factor is the conductivity of the insulator. Is it clear to everyone in real life? So whether you have a steel pan or a aluminum pan or a copper pan, if the handle is made of wood, the heat that you will feel at your hand will depend on the conductivity of the wood, not on the conductivity of the aluminum or copper or steel. Is this clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then, but our approximation arithmetic mean says that conductivity is Kp by 2, which is a very large value. If it is aluminum, Kp of aluminum is very large. So Kp by 2 is also a very large value. It means that the heat flux we will get based on this assumption will be very large. Okay, which it will not be correct, right? This is not a correct representation, because in real life there cannot be any heat flux, but in our case we are finding that there is a significant heat flux because our average conductivity is very large. But in real life the average conductivity, equivalent conductivity should be almost equal to 0, as there cannot be any heat flux. So this arithmetic mean is a poor example, as seen here from this example. Okay. For small k, k should be the controlling factor, but in our case we are finding that Kp is the controlling factor. Okay. Let us take a look at the harmonic mean. 2 by small k is equal to this equation. Okay, if you remember, 2 by small k is equal to 1 by Kp plus 1 by Ke. Okay, we'll use this equation. 2 by small k is equal to 1 by Kp plus 1 by Ke. 1 by Kp is almost equal to 0 because Kp is very large. So ultimately 2 by K is equal to 1 by K capital E, or K small e is equal to 2 into K capital E. Okay. So here we see that K capital E is the controlling factor, governing factor. So if Ke is very small, conductivity of say wood or insulating material is very small, the equivalent conductivity is also very small. So this is giving us the correct type of variation in a composite material. Okay. So this is correct as Kp is very large, it provides no resistance. Okay. So we know that Kp should not provide any resistance. Resistance will come from the insulating material. So for this example, we can see clearly that harmonic mean is the better approximation and arithmetic mean is actually failing in this case. Okay. So you can also consider in terms of heat resistance. So the thermal resistance for the equivalent material is delta Xc by Ke. Okay, over the entire distance delta Xc by Ke. And this is also equal to the thermal resistance in this part. Okay, which is equal to delta Xc plus, which is half delta Xc by K capital E. Okay, this is from this also we get K small e is equal to 2K capital E. Any questions? We will stop, otherwise we will stop here and we will continue our discussion in the next class tomorrow. We have a meeting at 5:30. I will take a break, and meeting at 5:30 is there regarding the internships after 20-25 minutes. Any questions? So material is already uploaded, okay, in the Teams portal. This part is not there in your mid-sem exam, as I have already stated. In the mid-sem, the syllabus is up to the finite volume method. Means before the finite volume method. So starting from the previous class, starting from the finite volume method, that part will be there in the final exam. Okay, not part of this exam. So for your exam, you have to study just before the finite volume method. Okay. These parts you can study after the exam also. So if there are no questions, we will stop the class here. And we will meet again at 5:30. Please attend that meeting. Dr. Chetan will also be there. We will have a quick discussion on the internship status.